Pushing the boundaries of expectations, rewriting the rules of adventure are the reasons we get up in the morning. We share your hunger for a life without limits.
Greetings and welcome back to your Kinetic Belief podcast for manifesting your abundant life. I am so glad to have all of you back with us today. And if you'd like to receive an occasional encouraging text message from me, just text the word Kinetic to 844-844-0049. StephenCanyon.com is the website. Follow us on Instagram at Stephen Canyon. And make sure that you subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss an episode on the occasion that we'll drop one. So you can find it
which
wherever
is
we drop it.
every Monday through Thursday.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We do our best to do the same time every day, but...
Honestly, I'm just excited that we're doing it every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
I am too. And just being able to spend this time with you. Video of the podcast is also now available at StephenCanyon.com. Meg, how
Stephen,
are you?
Wonderful.
My
how are you?
Sweetest of friends.
My bestest friend.
Oh, you're the most amazing thing.
I'm glad that we're in love.
Because this would be a very weird conversation otherwise, right?
Well, I'm glad that it's reciprocated. Because I love you so much. I would just have to...
Oh.
I would be doomed to a life of just following you around.
Yeah.
Hiding in the bushes.
We'd both be doomed, wouldn't we?
Stalking you.
Yeah, right? I love the outfit today.
Oh, thank
so
you.
Cute.
Let me show everybody on the KB cam here. Look at the KB formula.
There it is.
And it's over a tree of life. I love how they did the font on this in sort of like an old school, old world script. I like that a lot.
Kinetic belief equal 1/2 mass times velocity square gives you the answer to all of the creative life.
My favorite thing is when someone says, what does that mean?
Oh, that's mine too, especially if I'm standing next to you.
Oh, dear God.
Because I'm
Let's
just
go
like, let's
outside.
hear it, Maggie. What does that mean?
Right.
Exactly.
When do you have a life, 200 hours to listen to our podcast? And I'll tell you.
Sure. You know what it means. Hey,
man.
if you could predict the future, would you want to have that ability?
Ooh. Can I change the future?
Well, that's a good question. I guess if you know something maybe is about to happen, you could go running over there to the scene of the whatever's going to be and start waving your arms around frantically and
No,
try
you
to
don't
change
understand. I know the future. This is coming.
Yeah, well,
no,
what is that
okay.
MC square thing there? KB square.
Right.
You know
Trying
everything.
to save your life. If I could make changes and make the future maybe better, then yes. But if I couldn't change anything, no, I would not want to know.
Well, I guess you'd be able to change things depending on what the thing. What was that Nicolas Cage movie where he was able to predict the future? I think he was doing it through formulas or something.
That's every Nicolas Cage movie.
Isn't it right? I think he's
Somehow.
always known what's going to happen in the future. Nicolas Cage. Now there's an
man.
actor.
You know, when Nicolas Cage is in a movie, you know he's just going to give it his all.
What was that? I think we saw it. Maybe it was on social media, but someone had found a clip of old movie. Was he a vampire? And he was chasing somebody around a room, or
And it was just...
what was that?
It's never meant to be funny, but it's so funny.
Is he making a movie now?
I think he's always making like 50 movies.
We need to have a Nicolas Cage night.
Movie night.
He's America's greatest treasure,
Well,
right?
I was going to say, when that movie, I love that movie, National Treasure. And when it came out, this meme was floating around saying the true national treasure is Nicolas Cage.
Absolutely. Hear, hear.
Hear,
Yes,
hear.
I totally agree with that. Yeah,
Yes.
what is that?
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, what about you? Same question for you.
Yeah, I think it depends on... It was my question. So I guess it depends on my question.
Like you're real surprised.
What do you mean by that? No.
Right. This is so sudden.
Well, beyond the unctions that higher wisdom already gives us, I would say no, because I think it'd be too much mind clutter. Because in alliance and in alignment with higher wisdom, with source, we are given unctions and we have the ability to prepare for what is to come without all of the unnecessary details. So beyond that, I don't think so.
Well, I have to say, you already have a lot of premonition and insight, and you bring many things into a conversation right before they happen. So you already have a lot of that.
But everybody does. We all have that same ability. It's transcending the ego that's identifying with the empirical forms around us that gives anybody the ability to attune with higher wisdom consciousness, where there is no timeline. And so you do have the ability to see into the future, so to speak, in a way that unctions will prepare you. And also that's how attraction works, is through the imagination of desires for what you want to manifest. Manifestations being a futuristic term for what you're going to expect. So we all have the same ability. It's just some are very, very limited by the veil that they allow to remain over the eyes of their imagination by attaching themselves and identifying with what they can already see and hear and feel and those things.
Well, and I have to say, this is something I know that you've been aware of within yourself and that you've worked on for a long time. So it's obviously something you can hone, a skill that you can cultivate.
Well, that is true, because what I did in my own life, it's 30 years ago, is I began putting pressure on the materialization of those visualizations of things prior to them actually happening in this realm. In other words, I worked on my expectation for those, and the occurrence became unbelievable as far as frequency, because it was part of my kinetic belief for these things to happen. And so, anybody can do that. And it's part of the way that we navigate the life that we're all experiencing.
Well, and I have to say, your question for me was the perfect segue here to the question that we received from a kinetic believer. Would you like to go ahead and hear it now?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's from kinetic believer named Renee. Hello, Renee.
Oh, hi, Renee.
Hi, thanks for writing in. And her question is as follows. For as long as I can remember, I've suffered from anxiety, and after finding kinetic belief, I've made huge strides in the last 2 years, and I've overcome a lot of it. However, the recent world events have put my fearful tendencies into overdrive, now affecting every thought of my future. I spend a lot of time afraid of, quote, what ifs. I allow those things to dictate my happiness and my well-being. I give things so much power over me unintentionally. I spend a lot of time letting fear hold me back, and I don't want that anymore. How can I stop feeling so fearful of everything and just let go?
Interesting that she used the phrase, the what ifs, because that is an actual manifestation of worry and doubt and fear. Is the mind takes a stance of, well, I'm going to anticipate the what could happen. I'm going to anticipate all of those what ifs, which it's a rabbit hole. Yes. And it's one that you really can't close the door on. Good question, and especially for the days that we're living in, and the news and all of the media antics and rantings and all of those things. So we'll try to peel some of this back. And we've talked about the substance of fear many times actually on this podcast over the years, and I think maybe let's take a little deeper dive into exactly what it is, because fear, like faith and happiness and joy and all of those things, actually has a quantum substance. It's a very real thing, and it's not just an attitude. It's not just a whimsical thought, an imagination based on what ifs. It's real. It's tangible. So perhaps for perspective, let's gain some perspective. To understand fear, let's deep dive into the quantum world for just a second. The quantum world has a lot in common with pants.
What?
And you can't just go to a store and get a pair of pants that are an exact match for your body.
I know that's right. Oh, man. Truer words.
Can I get a shout out?
Oh, yes.
But it's not an exact match for your body. Instead, what you're forced to do is to choose between pairs of pants that come in predetermined sizes that might be close to being a perfect match for you. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, but that's typically the case.
Those bell bottoms I got recently are a major exception.
That was an exception.
It's like they were made for me.
But for the purpose of what I'm trying to help Renee with. Okay,
I got excited talking about pants.
Okay. The subatomic world is similar to going into a store looking for pants. in that just as you can only buy pants in multiple of sizes, energy comes in multiples of the same quanta. There aren't fractions of fractions of fractions of quanta in between those sizes. So the multiples of quanta is very exact, very precise, and that's actually where we get the name quantum physics from. And that is a quantum object existing in multiple states at one time is, take an electron, for example. And an electron it's both here and it's over there and it's simultaneous. So it's in both places at the same time. And it is only once we do an experiment to find out where it is that it settles down into one or the other. Now, why is the size of quanta and the location of particles important to understanding fear? All of this makes quantum physics. It takes we're talking about probabilities of existence, probability of you maintaining a space energetically that's beneficial to you, for example, in that we can only say which state an object is most likely to be in once we add our state of being. And in this case, let's add the state of being that Renee's talking about, the one of fear, to the state of being. And all things, fear included, is made up of quantum energy. And the term quantum of energy means that the energy is not transferred continuously. And this is important. It's not, you think of energy going through, say, an electrical cord continuously from the outlet in a wall to an appliance. And that's not how it works in the quantum field of possibilities. The term quantum energy means that energy is not transferred continuously, but as discrete individual packets of energy. So attraction occurs through this emittance of bursts of these packets of energy. So here we're talking about negative fear-based packets of energy. And for this conversation today, let's just imagine that those packets of energy are just totally fear-based packets. And this is somebody that's gone down the rabbit hole, and they're perpetuating this a snowball effect, and those packets are getting bigger and bigger, and they just keep throwing more information into it, negative imaginations. What if this happens? Well, what if this happens? Well, what if they say that? What if they don't do this? What if I don't get the raise? What if terrorism happens in my neighborhood? The what ifs, and they build in velocity. And then there is, and all of a sudden, there's this kinetic burst of fear that attracts the thing that is feared. That's kinetic energy. That's the mathematical formula that's on the top of your tree of life there. And so let's imagine that there's a fear of heights. There's a fear of spiders, a fear of snakes, a fear of dying, fear of speaking, fear of rejection, a fear of 3 holes on the back of your phone. There's a fear of clowns. There is a fear of terrorism, a fear of the sun, a fear of darkness, whatever it is. While many people believe that fear is normal or healthy, you have to start factoring in and considering the definition of all the phobias, because an exaggerated, usually inexplicable and illogical fear of a particular object, like I just mentioned, or a class of objects or situations, begins to produce those packets of energetics. And as you continue to feed into those, they are absolutely going to manifest into your life the very thing that you're fearful of.
Wow.
And so fears actually have no logical reasoning behind them, and they don't serve a good purpose either. But what fear does do is it produces torment. Physiologically speaking, it's not natural to the essence of your higher being. Fear is actually the opposite of faith. And it's the opposite of a good belief, a kinetic belief that you've chosen to desire and to imagine to come to pass in your life. And fear contains no force, energetic force of optimism, which is produces happiness and joy, and which are forces of gratitude that are producing health and life.
I have to say that her question was really profound to me in that she didn't lay out something really specific that she's afraid of. And I remember a time in my life, it was many years ago, but I lived with a lot of anxiety, and which is just, I think, another term really for fear. And the funny thing about that is that it's not necessarily toward any specific thing. It's fear-based for the sake of being fearful. It's anxiety for the sake of anxiety. And that negative energetic just is constantly looking for something to attach to. Mm-hmm. And I find that to be incredibly dangerous because it's something that feels very intrinsic at the time, and it just wants to glom on to anything and everything that you're hearing or seeing to really make it make sense to you.
Yeah, typically a person that is plagued by fear is someone that's already being led by feelings and emotions. And when there's a negative feeling, then to validate the negative feeling, you've got to come up with a narrative. Well, why do I feel this trepidation? Why do I feel anxiety and anxious? Well, let me think on this for a minute, and I'll come up with a story that validates the reason that I feel negatively.
Right.
And so, here the importance of not being someone led by feelings and emotions becomes vital to your success. Feelings and emotions change. And if you allow those to be the thing that dictates the narrative and the egoic stories you're telling yourself, well, you're a double-minded person, and you can't stay the course, and you'll never get to destination A, B, or C. Mm-hmm. But, Meg, the world as it is spiritually evolving toward perfected completion. And it's cycling through change. And while awakening from a conscious sleep, what's going to be revealed is the dysfunctional, the transcendental process of enlightenment. And in that process, you can and should convince yourself that there is nothing that should be feared in the process, because all of those what-ifs are resulting from the optics of a world that is dysfunctional and becoming more so every day, and it's creating a sense of anxiety. And it's culturally, there's an anxiety that's building, and it's worldwide right now. But the perspective becomes vital, and especially in the days that we're living in, and access to all the information that we have. And you can say, well, why do I feel this way? Well, let's turn on the news and I can tell you in about 10 minutes why I feel this way. Or if you're feeling great, or if you're not feeling anything, you can still turn it on or go to social media and you can find a reason to become fearful. Reasonings, rationalizations. But here's what's happening. Just as the caterpillar becomes dysfunctional right before it undergoes a metamorphosis into the beautiful butterfly that it becomes, the egoic state of consciousness, which is more predominant than the awakened consciousness, will become, for human beings, it's going to become more and more dysfunctional.
Wow.
And that dysfunctionality is intensifying. And while all systems disintegrate, objective truths are being revealed to be wrong, historically wrong, the wisdom of the ancestral wisdom incorrect, subjective truth incorrect, egoic traditions no longer sustaining the beliefs that have been believed to be true. Wow. And as a result, the collapse that is being revealed is causing a growing number of acute crises in multiples that have not before been seen on planet Earth because of the optics and lens of the internet and news and this one world consciousness of the collective that is all of a sudden the collective is immersed in the fearful substance of a quantum multiplication, and it's increasing in multiples never before seen before, not on this planet. And it's affecting so many parts of the planet all at the same time. And this is what's happening right now.
So, wow, this is it's a light bulb moment. And beyond that, it's a revelation knowledge moment for me. This idea that your egoic state is going to become highly dysfunctional really before breakthrough. Is
that's correct.
The point that you were referring to? And I think that's really, oh man, that's really good, because we need to know. We need to know what the process looks like, what the process of not just manifestation, but evolution, spiritual evolution within ourselves looks like, so that we can know, oh, we're on the right track. I see this marker. I see that marker. Because I think many times you can be deceived into thinking that it's all going to work out immediately, and it's all going to come up roses immediately, and it's all going to be perfect. But you have to understand that we have to go through this sacrificial process of all the things that we don't want to cling to anymore.
So a sacrificial process in that it appears to be something that you're not going to want to go through, but then the outcome is always better, isn't it? And I want to tell you that today, right now, emphatically, and I from the depths of my soul, that what you are seeing around the world right now, what you're being told, what you are hearing about, all of the negative stuff as it may try to appear to you, these things are absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And I want everybody listening today to get that, receive it, meditate on it until you believe it. There's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And if you stay present, and if you stay fully attached to your highest viewpoint for transitioning your life beyond what you've been told that you should be believing, and if you choose not to succumb to fear, if you choose to not believe the media when they tell you that you should be afraid, that these things then will not affect you. They will not come against you. Acute crisis and dysfunction always precedes, or it always coincides with any evolutionary spiritual advancement or any kind of a gain in not only in the individual, but collective conscious awareness. So why the resistance to change? Why is there fear to the what ifs and the possibilities and all those things? All life forms need obstacles. All life forms need a challenge in order to evolve. And fear, what we call fear and recognize as being fear, is simply the psychological motivating force, not only behind warfare and violence between nations and tribes and religions and ideologies, but also the cause of incessant conflict in even personal relationships. So fear manifests a distortion in your perception of other people and a distortion in your perception of yourself. And it's kind of like going through the hall of mirrors at the fairground, and you look this size, and you're tall, and you're short, and your hands are big, and all this this change of perception of yourself. Well, that's what fear does, and it does it through the optics and the lens of an irrational state of being, and it's through fear of which worry and doubts are constructed that people will misinterpret every situation. It adds to it things that are not accurate and not true, but that are required to validate this enormous pressurization of anxiety that results from being fearful. And so what happens is, Renee, it leads you, and this is why it can be so dangerous too. In relationships, in your daily activities, whatever you're doing, because it will lead fear will lead someone to misguided actions, which are motivated by the negative purview of the ego and all of the reasonings that accompany actions that are based in fear. And the reason that the ego starts shouting at you, you need to run, you need to do this, you need to quit that job, you need to give them a piece of your mind, you need to fight back, kick back, whatever it is, that's the ego giving you a marching order for action. It's to help you, and it will convince you that it's to help you get out of fear, to get away from the thing that you fear. But all it's actually doing is just aligning you with attracting more of the same ideology that's producing your concept of fear. And this is a bottomless rabbit hole a bottomless pit, and you can never overcome that through the reactions that the ego is telling you to take to that. And it is so important to realize that fear is not actually the dysfunction, which is a deep-seated egoic delusion that you have personally identified with. So to rid yourself of the destructive energetics of fear, you're going to have to go down to the root of the dysfunction. And again, fear itself is not the dysfunction.
When we are, I really liked how you portrayed and told us that fear is a distortion. And I liked that because you can so easily, like the crazy hall of mirrors that we've all been in before, it's easy to imagine that. So obviously, perception is based in mindset and perspective, which is, like you're already saying, directly related to identifier's ego. So I'm wondering, when we are shifting our mindset, we're shifting our energy to rise above fear, to rise above that distortion of this perception. Are we focusing on the authority and dominion that we have been given as creatives, or are we focusing on the abundance and the positive energetics in the universe? And so, and I hope that I asked that correctly, because those are two very powerful entities that we're constantly engaging with, those two ideas. But I'm just wondering, which one do we attach ourselves to constantly rise above fear?
I like the way you asked the question, because to focus means that you're asking, well, where do I go?
Yes.
Where do, if not here, where?
Yes.
And every human being spiritually comes in the world unafraid. Mm-hmm. There's a place that you've already been there before where you were not fearful. And fear rationalizations haven't grown into the egoic thought of identity as of yet when we come into the natural. Now, going back to that place, and recognizing the genius of your purpose before you attached yourself to anything that irrationally caused you to become fearful is the beginning of that journey. So here's what happens. Whenever you feel afraid, remember that there's no fear in alignment with your higher essence of being, which was in its purest state of consciousness before you began attaching yourself to the validations and the judgments of negative influencers, either from yourself and the way that you see yourself negatively, and all of those things can be measure up to a lifetime of experiences and conversations. Fear is produced by a mental construct of the ego. It's produced by that. And it's not real. It's just a production of the energetics of a narrative that the ego has adapted for itself as being a truth. And in the days that we're now living in, I just want to say that it is imperative that you should absolutely watch what you're feeding the mind with. Franklin Roosevelt had it right when he said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. It's not a thing. Remember that fear doesn't prevent bad things from happening. Fear, when it's tolerated, is quantifiably the cause of bad things happening. It's the cause of those bad things. In other words, even nature responds negatively to the energetics of fear. And it's an attraction. It's a thing that causes the thing you're fearing to come against you. You know, we do a lot of hiking in the Rocky Mountains. And we have back up in the Appalachians as well. But most recent years, frequently, we do a lot of hiking now in the Rockies. And experts will tell you that if you ever encounter a bear, don't run. Well, that's much easier to read in a brochure than it is to actually do that if you encounter a bear. But the reason you shouldn't run is because when you run, the bear thinks that you're prey and will continue chasing you. So the experts say, just stand your ground. So, and what's happening here? Fear is actually the universal language of destruction. It's the substance of those negative packets of energy that we were talking about. Remember, they're fear-based packets, and they build increase in velocity. And then there's this kinetic burst of energetic, of a fear. And it's a tangible in the quantum world of physics. And so you run from the bear. The bear senses those packets of energetics of fear being released, and it's a response to that. The bear doesn't have to think, "Oh, this is a hot dog for dinner. I'm going to go ahead and put some slaw on it." It doesn't rationalize this intense longing to pursue or to be attracted to those packets of energetic. And the destructive force of that bear, which is already within it, is the thing that is attracted to the thing that is fearing its destructive force.
Wow, I love these new definitions that you're always giving us. You know, it was just the other day, well, I guess it was really yesterday, that you took us on a deep dive into the ego, and it gave me a fresh definition. Because when you have the proper framing for something like fear, ego, it does allow you to, in a bigger way than ever, step back and be that observer that you're always telling us to be, to observe it, to understand it so that you can deal with it properly. And so fear all of a sudden not being the outcome, it's simply really the opportunity is illuminating so much in my spirit and so much in my mind. And I feel like it's going to give me the ability to step back and deal with it as it needs to be dealt with.
I'm getting excited with you. Revelation knowledge just becomes you. And it's that thing, I don't know why I know or how I know. I just know it in my knower that I know.
And I know it's good.
And it's changing me. And I know that it's good. But because, fear in almost every instance, Meg, it opens the door to death and destruction. And a person, by making wrong choices, can actually open up that door into their life by watching movies and imagining bad things happening to them. Whether you know it or not, images, they stay with you. And the subconscious mind, well, it's like a movie screen, and it doesn't know the difference between reality and fiction. So watch what you're watching, Renee, and take back the control of those gateways into consciousness. Your mind should not be feeding on fear, horror, murder mysteries, negative news, or anything else that's fear-based.
Well, and I love, again, just reframing fear because it's so emotional, isn't it? And so a new piece of revelation knowledge that's coming through what you're saying is, to overcome, to find a solution, to find peace, and to scale the seeming problem, it doesn't require fear. You don't have to have that level of negative energetics to properly deal with something. Because I think a lot of times biologically, we feel as though we need fear. We need fear to know how to deal with something and to be motivated enough to overcome it. But as a kinetic believer, we are the ultimate observer. We are the king looking down on the kingdom, and we don't have to be in the thick of all this to deal with it properly.
Yeah, and when you know the source of fear, you know how to resist it. When you know where it's coming from and that it is not an actual tangible, but it is something that is being produced physiologically. And there are, there are people that will say that, well, you need, Steve, fear to tell you not to put your hand on something that's hot. No, you don't need fear for that. You need experiential knowledge for that.
Yeah.
And you need an education for that. And so can you really make a choice not to fear something is the question. Can you logically, using the ego like we did a deep dive into yesterday, to inform you to not fear something? Emotions never belong in the driver's seat of your life. You do. You do, by being the one that's in charge, the one that has transcended the ego that's alarmingly attaching itself and its identity to the way that it's constructing the universe around you. Yes, you can choose to love, and you can choose to live a life that is free of fear. And when you refuse to fear, by resisting the spirit of fear, it brings freedom. And nature abhors a vacuum, and it's going to bring peace into your life because you're refusing the spirit of fear. Whenever a fearful thought tries to creep in, just be quick in your response and say, you know what? No, I refuse to fear. I'm not going to do it. But what about no buts? I am going to refuse to have fear, regardless of how big the bear is.
Well, I was just going to say that I love that analogy because I'm going to carry that with me. When fear shows up, don't run. Don't have the instinctive reactionary response. And that kind of leads into my next query here. I'm wondering, how does our highest self fit into all of this? Where does it fit in? When do we activate it? When are we in it all the time? I want to understand the connection.
Sure. Well, like all things that the ego tries to convince you of, recognize the ego as an entity that is separate from you. It's separate from your higher self. It is not you. It's part of the ego. It's part of the lower self that you've been identifying with that has absolutely nothing to do with your genius of purpose or the one who created you, your oneness with life's source. One of the things that I do in recognizing that different, the construct of the difference, and being able to transcendentally raise myself up above that. One of the things I do is I talk back to fears. And when they try to creep in, hey, Steve, you're afraid of this, don't you? When I hear that, I say, no. That's when I have a response. And I personally, for most people, the answer is they do nothing. When the thoughts that are aligned with the emotion, fear, creep in with a narrative, most people don't do anything. Or at best, they may try to stop thinking the wrong thoughts and to force those wrong thoughts to just go away. But you cannot fight thoughts with thoughts. It's not possible to do that. They're both on the same team. You're trying to use a combative part of your ego you're identifying with the fear to try to deal with the fear. It's not possible. You fight thoughts with words. And so I go to my manifesting journal, I open it up, and I've got affirmations in there that tell me who I am, that tell me who I am in my genius of purpose, that I identify with with source, with my unique, creative, one-of-a-kind person that I am, and with the strength and authority and the dominion to be able to imagine and to desire and to, with gratitude and the words that I speak, the language that I'm learning in alignment with what I'm expecting to manifest, and the actions and all of that. Those are the words that I speak. And then you fight effectively negative thoughts with positive words. So when a fearful thought comes, Meg, I respond immediately out loud with words of belief from my chosen articles of faith.
Well, and I love this because it seems like a small nuanced shift, but it's actually sort of a tectonic shift in how we deal with fear. Because when you're speaking, that's the only way that you can sense your, stiffening your spine and becoming hyper aggressive. And I think that's also it. Not only is it speaking to fear to eliminate it, but I think you're also in those moments speaking to the universe and voicing, I believe the law of attraction. I believe kinetic belief. I know that this works, and that's why I'm saying this. And so I wonder if when we're doing that, are we in turn sending out those packets of energy that you began by describing and teaching us about?
That is correct. And with perspective, you know what kind of packets that you want to be sending out, and not the negative ones, but the positive ones. And so, because without knowing it, most people live in fear and negativity, and they just talk it a lot. And you actually help me with this more, and you know you do, because I get caught up in the news of the day, and I'm like, well, did you hear what they're doing over there? And you say, no, I didn't, and I don't want to. And okay, and then I take a minute and I get back on track, because it is what you're deliberately paying attention to that becomes you. Mm-hmm. And especially if it's provoking the energetics of fear, you're going to manifest the very thing that you're fearful of.
One of the things that gets me, and it irritates me so much, is I will be watching a really sweet movie, right? And then they will choose to make one of the commercials for a horror movie. I'm like, read the room, people. Like, I'm watching Hallmark. I don't need to see who's getting killed in the haunted house. Like this is, but I'm just saying it's something that I think we can identify with, right? Because I love this concept of identifying as a believer, identifying with sweetness and kindness. And maybe everybody does say that it's cheesy. Bring on the cheese, because the world is just so full of this negativity and these energetics, and it's a war zone. And so having these safe havens that we create for ourselves are so vital.
There are so many people out there that are living in haunted houses. And if you are, it's time to do some house cleaning. And because this is where you're going to need to make some decisions in your life, because you don't necessarily have to cut people out of your life to do some house cleaning, but you absolutely will want to limit your time that you're spending with those who are a constant stream of fear and doubt.
Yes.
So you got to do some house cleaning. You don't want your house to be haunted anymore. And you may think that their fear, whoever you are in relationship with, and their negativity, you may think that it's not going to affect you because you're a kinetic believer. You spend time in your journal and listening to these podcasts, but what you stream into your eyes. Now listen, whatever you are allowing into your gates and into your ears becomes fuel for the mind, just as what you put in your body becomes fuel for it, whether healthy or damaging.
I have a question about this, and I've wondered about it for a long time, and I don't know why I've never asked you about this before now, but I'm so curious as to why it seems like negative energetics have so much more power in the moment than positive. And I'm saying that because if you are around a negative person, for example, they will suck the life out of you. And you can try to gin up your positive energetics all you want, but it just seems like you're drained so much faster when you are watching something negative, having a negative conversation. And I know that they're not necessarily more powerful, but I'm wondering why you've told us before, you cannot overcome that negative necessarily with the positive. Don't think you're going to change that energetic. You have to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm. Because in the thing about positive energetics, or a life being lived positively, is you have authority and dominion over yourself, but not other people. Negativity is misplaced dominion. And so in the presence of misplaced dominion, then you are allowing yourself, you're giving access to negative source influence. And the fearful people, you don't want fearful or negative energetics to have your attention at any cost, even if you know better. So you have to spend time with people who are positive and filled with optimism. The default of the experiences that we are having in this world is negative. It's the default. The choice where the pressure is manifests and goes against that resistance is the choice of the positive, which is not the default. So the default wins without the effort.
Wow.
And without the effort, you're in the presence of the default, which is going to overcome you. And so you are really mistaken if you think that you can make yourself subject to those negative antics and not be redirected in your life by it. Wow. And something else, it's going to bring great change to your life, and it'll keep you free of the damages of fear if you absolutely do some house cleaning and take stock of the way that you're going through your day, who you're talking to, what you're watching, what you're hearing, and then cast down negative imaginations and replace those with optimism of your highest viewpoints for living your best life.
I want to share something with the KBs that you told me very early on when we had just met, and I was just becoming familiar with kinetic belief. I was learning so much, but this was absolutely life altering for me. And you told me to make sure that I was categorizing my relationships correctly. And you said that when I called someone a friend, I'm literally saying that that person is somebody that I am allowing their emotions to connect with me, tether to me, and vice versa. And that really completely rearranged every relationship I had. And so I started categorizing people as, okay, this is a friend because I can receive their emotions and it's positive. Or this person is really a project and it's not somebody I want to intimately connect with, but I still have love for them. And I want to be an outreach and asset to them. One
of the biggest mistakes that a lot of KBs will make as soon as they get their own house in order and everything is just humming along sweetly and beautifully, is they'll go out and in an energetic way, optically say, I'm going to align myself with their brokenness and their negative way of life and share in the destructive emotions and feelings that they're having. And that's what friendship is. Find yourself to align with, as far as a friend is concerned, with somebody that is optimistic, and somebody else that is living their best life, expecting to live their best life, and does not have a habitual way of conversing about all the things that are wrong with the world today. And like Maya Angelou said, hope and fear cannot occupy the same space.
Yes.
Invite one to stay.
A wise woman.
Invite one to stay. You can't have both. Well, let's work on some highest viewpoints.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking
and we need to,
of Maya Angelou.
We need to say them, not just think them. Now we know.
Now we know. That's right. Speak it out loud and displace those negative thoughts with these positive words. Just say, I am grateful.
I'm grateful.
For all of the wonderful manifested desires in my life.
For all of the wonderful manifested desires in my life.
And I wake up every single morning.
I wake up every morning.
Excited to experience myself.
Excited to experience myself.
My authentic self.
My authentic self.
And I am attracting good things into my life.
I'm attracting good things into my life.
Through the positive things that I say.
Through the positive things that I say.
So I will fear not.
I will fear not.
Because I have nothing to fear.
Because I have nothing to fear.
And I'm attracting positive circumstances.
I am attracting positive circumstances.
And positive people into my life.
And positive people into my life.
I believe in my inner genius of purpose.
I believe in my inner genius of purpose.
So I choose to use my authority.
And so I choose to use my authority.
To advance my life.
To advance my life.
My body and soul.
My body and soul.
Toward perfected completion.
Toward perfected completion.
I'm journaling every day.
I'm journaling every day.
Because I'm seeing myself come through the pages.
Because I'm seeing myself come through the pages.
And establish my conscious thought forms.
And establish my conscious thought forms.
As positive ones.
As positive ones.
Fearless ones.
Fearless ones.
And I'm expanding my imagination.
I'm expanding my imagination.
Which is aligning all of my actions.
Which is aligning all of my actions.
For attracting abundant health.
For attracting abundant health.
And prosperity into my life.
And prosperity into my life.
My desires.
My desires.
Are manifesting right now before my eyes.
They're manifesting right now before my eyes.
And more every day.
And more every day.
And my life.
And my life.
Is overflowing with an abundance of happiness and joy.
Is overflowing with an abundance of happiness and joy.
Everybody.
Everybody.
I am a living, breathing.
I'm a living, breathing.
Attracting force.
Attracting force.
For all of my best desires.
Yes, for all of my best desires.
And every single day.
Every single day.
I visualize my ideal life.
I visualize my ideal life.
While unwaveringly.
Kinetically believing.
To expand my territory. And I want you to know. That I possess the inner power. To establish my reality.
What an awesome overcoming fear podcast this has been. I feel full of revelation knowledge, so empowered. I want to just say thank you to all the kinetic believers that are engaging with us on social media. I have to say, I want you to know that it fills me up with friendship, kindredness, and I'm so deeply grateful for you. Seeing the comments, seeing even just the likes on the affirmations and on the postings, it generates so much love and so much warmth.
Sending out much light and love to all you KB creatives all around the world.
Oh yeah, and thanks as usual, Steve, for all the wisdom.
Bye.